So pivoting real quick back to because we want to know more about your Bitcoin mining experience, and thank you so much for sharing what you did there. But as far as that goes, so obviously we know that you're big into Bitcoin. I mean, you're Bitcoin max at the end of the day. How'd you get into mining though? You invested initially,
Yeah,
but
I
like
love this
tell us about
story.
your tell us about your mining experience.
I love this story. To kind of preface all of this, I'm a heat punk. And if you don't know what a heat punk is, we are, it's similar to like cypherpunks and techno punks in back in the day. Like we have, ideological understanding of Bitcoin and we mine Bitcoin on principle. But a heat punk differs in the fact that like we utilize that heat in some way, shape, or form that is produced from a Bitcoin miner. Now, how I got into this. I started getting into Bitcoin in 2023, like I started learning about mining and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like I want to be a Bitcoin miner. I want to produce my own Bitcoins. Like this sounds great. I had no idea what the hell I was doing. Absolutely no idea. So what I did is I go on Amazon. I found a used S9 and a power supply for like $80 and I got it home. I set it on my counter. I plug it in. I hooked everything up. Like I watched a couple of videos. I figured it out. I learned two things real fast. The two things that I learned is that Bitcoin miners are fucking loud. They are like 87 decibels loud. Like they're
Woo,
loud
woo,
and they
buddy.
produce a significant amount of heat. Now, the funniest thing about this whole story is that like I'm Bitcoin maxi full through and through at this point even. My wife, she's not. She doesn't care. She's like just don't lose our
No,
money.
I would
Like
say
I
not
don't
until
care.
our IRA went into it.
Exactly. So like I get this miner, I put it on my countertop and I'm just chilling. I've got headphones on because it's loud. It's producing a lot of heat. So I've got the windows open. I've got the door open. Like I'm evacuating that heat out of the house. It's probably like September. So this time of year. So it's still kind of warm.
Hmm.
And my wife comes home and she gets out of the car and she can hear this thing just absolutely whirring away. She comes inside. The cats are nowhere to be found. The dog is like sitting on the floor shivering, and I've got my headphones on, just like vibing. And she looks at me and she's like, "What the absolute is this? Like, what the hell are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, babe, it's our Bitcoin miner." She says, "I don't care what it is, get it out of my house." And this is like a key moment for a lot of Bitcoin miners because we understand Bitcoin. We understand why Bitcoin matters. And then you want to get involved in it because there's a couple of ideological reasons. You want to be a part of the Bitcoin network. You want to be a part of the global computing network that we call Bitcoin because you want to not only secure your bag, but help to create new transactions and, possibly have the ability to create new Bitcoins. Like there's a whole aspect there. So when my wife was like, get it out of my house, like that's not okay, I had to like go into like problem solving mode and go like, okay, well, how do I reduce the output, reduce the noise level, reduce the heat, or put the heat somewhere so that my wife isn't like saying no? And so from September to February, I spent all that time learning how to underclock the Bitcoin miners with firmware. I learned how to duct the heat out of it. So, I put a
Wow.
bunch of
So you're doing like
like ducting.
engineering work.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
you're
Like
literally doing
DIY
like
engineering,
you're doing like HVAC work.
basically.
Okay.
And so it got to a point where like this 2500 watt or 1500 watt miner, I was able to underclock it to like 600 watts. So it was 14 terahash. I underclocked it. It went down to like 8 terahash, somewhere like that. So I wasn't making like anything at all.
Okay. Okay.
But what happened is instead of turning my heater on throughout that time, the winter, I was using a Bitcoin miner. And so and this is where the light bulb really clicked for Bitcoin mining for me. Instead of paying my utility provider to like flip a switch and turn my heater on and heat my house, I was now paying to run the electricity through a Bitcoin miner that was subsidizing the cost of the heat produced by a small amount, a factor of like, not a factor, a small portion of that. I think my heater, I did the numbers. I think my heater costs me, $40 a month to run when I'm
Hmm.
running it to heat my house. My
Hmm.
Bitcoin miner at the time cost me like, I want to say $40 to run, but I mined like $5. So like it's tiny. It's tiny. But that kind of showed me like, okay, this Bitcoin miner produces heat. It gets paid to produce heat. And now I'm getting paid to heat my house a small portion. So what does that look like as you scale? You know, it was a very inefficient machine. It was very cost effective because it was like $80, so I didn't put that much money into it. And so I started thinking about that. And so now I've upgraded my home heating system. I call it the wife approval factor. So the WAF, I have hid it behind a wall. It has aftermarket fans on it, so
Yo,
it's quiet.
this is insane. This is insane, man. This
These
is
are the things
crazy.
that you learn. You know, you go through this process, this trial and error process, trying to create a conducive environment for the people around you, and then also trying to be involved in Bitcoin mining. So I have a heat setup in my house. It is pretty cool, actually. I'm pretty proud of it. S19K Pro, it's 120 terahash, full power. So I've used the power coming out of my heater. I've directed that power up to the miner. It's got an aftermarket fan on it, 800 CFM. So it's quieter, but it pushes more air, keeps the chip temps cool, and it pushes that air throughout my entire house. And I've been using that for the last year, and I don't use my heater in my house anymore. And it's hidden behind a wall. It's not any louder than my heater was before, and it mines Bitcoin.
Wow, that
So that's
is
my journey into mining.
that's amazing. It basically went from, hey, let's just try this Bitcoin miner to, oh, let's heat my house to, oh, I'm actually heating my house.
Yeah, around and find out. You can just do things.
That is amazing. So economically, more so speaking, so obviously you have to pay for running the Bitcoin miner,
Yeah.
and then so kind of like take us through like how much maybe it increased your electricity bill. You don't have to go into specific dollars and eight percentages, and then how much you're actually mining. So it's like, is there an offset, or how is that working out?
Yeah, so this is interesting. And again, I'll preface this answer by saying I'm an ideological Bitcoin miner. I mine Bitcoin on principle. I don't care what the price of Bitcoin is. I don't care what the hash price is. I just mine Bitcoin. And the reason I do that is because I am participating in the largest computing like network in the world, and that computing network is the Bitcoin ecosystem. I am helping to secure transactions. I am helping to generate new Bitcoins, and I am playing a very, very, very small part in it, but that's what I'm doing. And because I believe in Bitcoin through and through, I will do that no matter what. Now, the question you have is like, is it economically viable? For me, yes, because my power rate is like 10 cents during the day and 8 cents during the evening. So it's super cheap for me. Some people, it's not economically viable. And if you're not an ideological miner, it probably doesn't make sense. Now, the tie-in here is when you're already paying for heat and you have electrical heating infrastructure, 9 times out of 10, that electrical heating infrastructure is inefficient and it's dumb, meaning it doesn't pay you back. It's not connected to the internet. So if you can swap out Bitcoin mining heating infrastructure for just regular heating infrastructure, and you do it in a way that is economically viable, like say you need to replace your heater already, then you know a new heating system, a new HVAC system can cost you anywhere between $4,000 and $20,000, depending on how big your home is, depending on a lot of different factors. An S19K Pro is $1,000. You can get the engineering done, depending on how big your home is, for like another $1,500. So for me, it didn't raise my electricity bill by anything because it was actually cheaper to run the S19 than it was to run my heater.
Really?
It cost me, with the miner, it cost me about $3,200 to get all of the infrastructure set up. And at the time, last year, I was mining like $30 a month with it. Originally, I was paying like $40 a month, or yeah, $40 a month to run my heater. I'm actually paying less. I was paying like $30 a month with the S19, but I was getting paid enough Bitcoin that I was making $30 a month. I was economically, for me, it made a lot of sense. Now this year it's kind of changed a little bit, and I've actually changed up my mining, the way I mine. So I actually am not getting paid out anymore, but we could get into that if you want. I don't know if you want to get into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing I do
Yeah.
want to talk about. So it's like, so for you, it's more for, I mean, to run the Bitcoin network. And I think a lot of Bitcoiners and Bitcoin maxis, it's more for altruistic reasons as far as, hey, we have a broken system, or this, I'll say this, the system got us this far, but now it is breaking, it has broken. And then it's like, we want to do something else with it. And it's not necessarily about the fiscal incentive, because I mean, you have massive Bitcoin mining companies, right? And they make a ton of money. But the reason I ask this question is because a lot of people always bring up the general masses and audience are like, oh, like it's so expensive, this, that, etc. So it's good to hear this perspective as far as, hey, like, yes, does it cost money? Yes, but the thing is, like, it can also heat your house. But at the end of the day, you're doing it because this is for the greater good. This
Yes.
is for the greater good of Bitcoin and the network.
Well, and also, if you think about the way like governments have controlled you and, like basically channeled us into like these boxes where we don't have power, where we can't, have a say in how our world operates. The government doesn't care about you. 6102 back in 1937, 36 or whatever it is, like they 6102'd us, they made it to where we couldn't buy and hold gold. That could happen theoretically in Bitcoin. And so I'm not saying that I do this, but when you KYC your Bitcoin and you buy from an exchange, guess what? The government knows how much Bitcoin you have. They know where your Bitcoin is. They can track that. Bitcoin is not anonymous, it's pseudonymous. So Bitcoin can be tracked by governments. But when I mine Bitcoin, I'm mining virgin sats. So I am
Wow.
using my
Right.
utility provider as my Bitcoin exchange because I'm buying Bitcoin every day, DCAing with my electricity provider. That's what I'm doing. And so I might not be getting as much Bitcoin as I could if I just bought it on the open market. But if the government ever comes down and says, "Hey, Trevor, we now have control over your Bitcoin. You need to turn on your Bitcoin." Like, I'm not saying I would do that. I'm not going to turn in my Bitcoin. Like you're going to have to come not like break my door
Sure.
down and
Sure.
steal my hardware wallet. But nonetheless, if they do that, they have no idea how much Bitcoin I truly have because I've managed to be smart about it and separate, diversify, for lack of a better phrase,
Hmm.
my Bitcoin holdings.
That's and I totally see where you're coming from there. I mean, that's why I feel most of us got into Bitcoin, right? Because we got tired of that control, we got tired of that oversight, and it's like once we kind of realized it, we're like, wait, what? Especially back to the for me, the moment was definitely so I got into Bitcoin, then I started researching the entire banking system. It's based on a fractional lending system, led me back to 2008, and had my what the moment
Yeah.
essentially, and I was like, oh my god, this is so you get it. That's when I really started getting into it at that point. So I think pivoting here or continuing on with because I want to learn more about your mining experience and then just how that goes. So you obviously talked about just how you got into mining. It obviously heats your house and whatnot, and that's like a big part of it. But then obviously you do it for altruistic reasons and then less government oversight, right? So curious question for you. As far as explain to the audience, so miners and nodes, explain the difference like between a full node and a miner, and then you kind of touched upon it where you talked about, oh, miners uphold the security of the Bitcoin network. So get into those two things a little bit, so just general, so people understand.
Into computation and it's trying to find a nonce, which is just a number. It's a very large number. And if it finds that number, it gets rewarded. That's at the end of the day, that's all it is. It's just a computer. What a node is it's like a server. Okay. And it's also a computer, but it runs different tasks. It doesn't turn electricity into computational power. What it does is it is taking the information that the Bitcoin network is providing all around the world and it is basically relaying that from one node to another node. Just they're connecting. And the reason why nodes and miners are important. Bitcoin miners are important. Obviously, I kind of touched on it. They are generating new Bitcoins. They are securing the Bitcoin network, and they're also making transactions happen. If you and I want to have a transaction on Bitcoin, we need a Bitcoin miner to use computational energy to make that transaction happen. Now, what nodes do is nodes are so Bitcoin mining is the backbone. Nodes are like the overseers. What they're doing is they're validating those transactions, making sure those transactions are valid transactions and they play by all the same rules that everyone else is playing by, and then they send those transactions to the block that's getting created every 10 minutes into the blockchain. And once they've validated those transactions, the Bitcoin miner that finds the nonce then makes sure that that block gets sent to the blockchain. Now, the thing about nodes is that nodes are important and everyone should be running nodes. But if nodes are expensive to run, people aren't going to run them. So nodes infrastructure needs to be super cheap. Basically, it's really costly to run a Bitcoin miner, to create new transactions, to generate transactions, to generate new Bitcoins, and to secure the Bitcoin network. That is a costly endeavor, and it's made to be that way. But authenticating and auditing the Bitcoin network, the transactions, should be relatively cheap. So you have cheap node infrastructure and expensive Bitcoin mining hardware. And these two parts play key roles in making sure that our Bitcoin network, the global computing network of Bitcoin, moves the way that it does. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Absolutely. And I think you defined that pretty well as far as I especially like the analogy about how nodes are like the overseers and then miners were the backbones of it. So that definitely helps a lot.
Well,
And I
and
appreciate
I'll
go ahead.
I'll I'll say this. So like the Federal Reserve, there's only one node. The only person that's
Oh,
auditing
wow.
the
Yeah.
Federal
Good.
Reserve is the Federal Reserve. You have to trust the Federal Reserve telling you that like this dollar is worth this much, okay? That's asinine. It's insane. The fact that I have a node and I can create my own mempool and I can go onto the Bitcoin network and I can validate my transactions, I can validate your transactions, I can validate any transactions that are being sent to me, means that I'm auditing the blockchain every 10 minutes, anytime I want, which gives me a sense of control over my value and the network that I'm putting my time into. And that's kind of the difference between Bitcoin as money and like the Federal Reserve.
And that's so ironic too, because I mean, in USA, we always preach, oh, democracy. And I think about it, I'm like, isn't like Bitcoin the most
Democratic.
democratized?
Yeah. Well, and about that, dude, we're not even a democracy. We're a
We're not.
republic.
Yeah,
We're a
exactly.
republic.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing. But you
Yeah.
you want to talk about democracy and then you want to shit on Bitcoin, and the two things they don't compute.
They don't compute, but again, it's what we're taught, right?
True.
We're taught, hey, this is a democracy, even though in the Pledge of Allegiance we're told, and to the republic for
Yeah,
which it
for which it
stands.
stands. The republic.
We're indoctrinated from a very
Yes,
young
sir.
age.
Yes, sir.
It's yeah, as you're saying all these things, I'm like thinking about it like, man, like, yeah.
The
Things
conspiracies go deep, man. Let me grab my
yeah,
tinfoil
yeah.
hat because
Yeah.
holy sh.
Yeah, to all the audience members, I know you guys are thinking, "Oh, like this is pretty crazy." It's like, yeah, I mean, you got to think a little bit, do a little critical thinking from time to time. Again, that is definitely a helpful explanation as far as Bitcoin mining and that nodes go.